I'm Steve Gilman, and this is Brand Story, where we help you build stronger, more sustainable brands by sharing insightful conversations with brand leaders, marketers, and professional storytellers. My guest today is Rand Fishkin.
If you're a marketer and your job has been get traffic, that's not what marketing is. We need to return to the roots of marketing, which is not drive as many visitors as possible and then convert a very tiny number of them. It's be present in all the places where our audience pays attention, knowing that those sources will send an ever decreasing share of them to our property, but the ones who come to our property will be the ones who are most inclined to purchase.
Rand is the co-founder and CEO of SparkToro, which is a leading audience research tool that helps marketers discover where their audiences spend time online for real. And before SparkToro, Rand was co-founder and longtime CEO of Moz, which is one of the most influential companies in the SEO industry. And I can't tell you how much of a fan we are of yours and Moz and all the work you've done at SparkToro. He's also the author of the best-selling book, Lost and Founder, and the current co-founder and CEO of Snack Bar Studio, which is just a really exciting thing you're doing. And he's given so many speeches and keynotes around the globe. It's crazy. So, man, it's a real pleasure to have you on here. Welcome to Brand Story, Rand.
Oh, my pleasure, Steve. Yeah, good to be back.
Great, man.
Oh, no, wait, is this our first time?
This is our first time, and I think you just went out of focus, my friend.
Amazing.
Or no, actually, it was just the internet. Yeah, this is our first time talking, but I'm glad that you feel like we've done it before because that's a good sign.
You feel like an old friend. You know what it is? It's that smooth radio voice that you've got.
Thanks, man.
It's just thank God you have a podcast.
Yeah, I honestly I did tons of radio way back when, so I can't. My voice just sounds like that anyway. But I love podcasting because I love one-on-one conversations. So this is like my sweet spot, man. I'm an introvert and I love talking to people one-on-one.
I heard a quip. I think it was a joke. It was that men, especially in their 40s and 50s, have a lot of trouble making friends and keeping relationships, and so they start podcasts.
That's beautiful.
And so I think that's why we're here today.
That is. I mean, what's so funny about that is I've made some really good friends by doing this. So, man, I didn't know that's why I was doing it during the pandemic, but that probably was why I was doing it. I think I just missed talking to people, which, that is the center of friendship right there, right?
I think this is half of the reason that COVID started so many podcasts is that, we couldn't be together in person and there was a lot of content consumption on the web. And half is because I think humans miss other humans.
Yeah. And, there's so much surface level crapple. Everybody's moving so fast that it's also social media has ruined us for real conversations that I'm just stubborn. So this is our 5th year doing this podcast and I'm just going to keep going because
I really do feel I'm trying to remember. I was reading an article that talked about how 50 years in the future, 100 years in the future, people will look back at this era of social media and think, wait, you just let children and teenagers and young adults go on the internet and consume whatever Nazi, misogynist, problematic content and with no regulation? That's like how we view heroin dens, in the 1890s or whatever.
They are.
Wait, you could just walk into any town.
There was no health warning. Opium? There was no regulation, no health warning. No wonder you guys are so crazy.
You guys just let 14-year-olds smoke cigarettes?
Literally. Cigarettes and shots of tequila is basically letting it run on the internet without any warning. So, hey, I wanted to kick off today by talking about something that you talk about a good deal that I really connect with. And that's the fact that audience and understanding your audience is literally everything. It's so important. I think I really tried to, boil down what SparkToro is all about. It's about understanding audiences for real. So can you just kind of unpack your thoughts a little bit around why that's so important and how it just doesn't really genuinely happen so many times?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason it doesn't happen is because, unfortunately, many people in the marketing universe are given a specific task, channel, list of tactics, rather than a strategic goal of the business and then a group of people who need to be reached with a message in order for the business to have success. And at the executive level, right, at the highest level of, who's deciding what products we make and who they're for and what they're going to do and why we make them, I think there is a perceived need for understanding audiences. And this is why many companies require, hey, we need a persona and I want to see some market research and those kinds of things. But as soon as you drop right below the CMO, it's, you build links. You're a link builder. Don't come talking to me about where our audience is and why we should be thinking about Reddit and Pinterest and which podcast we need to pitch. Stay in your lane. And I think that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Because if you remove that artificial constraint, I think marketers get more creative. I think they get more targeted with the content they make and who it's for and where they promote those messages. And as a result, marketing gets more effective. The only problem, Steve, and I talk about this all the time, is that it gets more effective, but it doesn't get more attributable.
Yeah.
That is the other thing that I think holds so many people back, because, the CFO, the CMO look at, hey, Rand, you were on this podcast. What did that do for SparkToro?
Yeah, right.
Like, sure, some people probably listen to this podcast that you and I are having, and they go type in SparkToro and maybe they run some free reports, and maybe a few of those people in the next year or two become customers, but we'll never know.
Right. No, we won't.
And we'll never be able to attribute it to the Brand Story podcast. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so is the right answer to not make investments because you can't prove that they had impact? Or should you be in the places that your customers pay attention, knowing that it will have unmeasurable lift?
Yeah.
And I'm in the second camp.
Yeah, I am too. I think attribution and tracking, like over tracking, has done so much harm on the client side to marketing. And of course, we want to know what's working, but when you're trying to build a brand and you're trying to build relationships, like trying to track every single thing that happens that makes your brand desirable is impossible. And building awareness of your brand and why someone should care is a really human thing, So one of the things I think is missing as you get on the chain, like you get past CMO, sometimes even CMO and above, is empathy.
Oh yeah.
Where's our empathy? Like, why? I think the question I ask more often than not is, why should anybody care about that?
I think one of my most popular blog posts ever on SparkToro was, who will amplify this and why?
Yeah.
And that it gets to the heart of your question there, which is why should anyone care about this? And what is the core emotion that is being triggered that's causing a behavior beyond scroll, ignore. Yeah. And I think in an era where there's 1,000 times more pieces of content and messages that are consumed by every human every day than when we were kids, for example. Yeah. There's no better investment that you can make than, here are the people that we are targeting, and here's why they're going to care about the thing that we made. And how do we iterate until we get to a point where we can show that message is having success? And this goes to measurement. I think the measurement has moved from the attribution at the bottom of the funnel to impressions at the top of the funnel.
Yep. Yeah, because I think a lot of people have the disease of, like, everyone's sitting out there waiting to buy, and as soon as I hit them with a message, they're going to click and buy. My God, like, sure, sometimes, and yeah, if you're selling a product that's easy to click on and buy, but not most of us aren't. Most of us, it's much more complicated than that.
Maybe 1 out of 10,000 products is like that.
I know, right? But, the easy, like, we messaged you, now you buy it, right?
Yeah, you don't want to play that
Good
game.
luck figuring out how the person finally ended up saying yes and buying. But yeah, reaching human beings, I think in any way, whether you're going to try to get them to be a customer a year from now, 10 minutes from now, is about empathy and caring about people enough to try to understand them. So
Yeah.
your tool, which we'll get to in a minute, I think is really unique in that way. And I love the way that SparkToro and you look at search. But before we jump into that, I wanted to get you to unpack something that you've been talking about a lot lately, and
Yeah.
that the zero-click search, because everyone's all the buzz, and there's a good amount of like information hysteria, like, oh, AI has changed everything and no search matters anymore. And people say the most outrageously silly things. Can you kind of unpack zero-click search and what the impact this is having on the search world?
Yeah. So, well, I think one thing that's really interesting is there's a panic about it in the world of search, but where the real panic belongs is in the world of everything else,
Yeah, right.
right?
Yep.
So if you go back in time 10 or 15 years, Facebook, Reddit, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, all of those platforms, Pinterest, all of those platforms sent out a substantial amount of visitors. They referred traffic to the people and publications that had content on their networks at rates that are literally 100 or 1,000 times larger than what's going on today.
Yeah.
Zero-click internet is a real thing. It absolutely is a real thing. It's provable. You can see it. I liked the fact that last week the Cloudflare CEO, can't remember his name, Matt something, was talking about how for every, for every crawl, every visit by Googlebot or by Facebook's crawler, it used to be the case that they would send out 6 or 7 visits, and now it's for every 10 crawls, they send out 1 visit.
Yeah.
And so
The
it's
game
just
has
become,
changed.
the game has changed. When it comes to search, things are a little more complicated. And the story is essentially that over the last decade, the percent of searches that result in 1 or more clicks to an external website, non-Google owned, non-Alphabet owned website, that has declined.
Yeah.
However, the number of searches has grown so dramatically that the total amount of clicks available from Google is probably very close to where it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. So that's why there's this complicated sort of story, right? For every 100 searches, I'm only getting 10 visits where I used to get 30.
Right.
Or 10 visits where I used to get 15. But am I still getting 500, visits a day? Well, yeah, I am. And that's because the total number of searches has grown.
Right.
Now, I think the theory goes that this is an impossible trend to maintain, that essentially over the next 5 or 10 years, the total number of clicks will actually fall. The amount of traffic that search engines refer will fall. And a healthy portion of that, although certainly not all of it, because the trend existed long before AI, but a healthy portion of that is driven by the adoption of AI and the preference that users are showing to get instant answers and have more complex conversations that are immediately answered without having to visit any other website.
Yeah.
Like, I think that the adoption of mobile and honestly the popularity of what I'd call the social feed, whether that's the TikTok feed or the Reddit feed or the Instagram feed or the LinkedIn feed, the popularity of adoption of the feed has basically socialized all of us to enjoy this. I don't know if you can see my finger. My finger is sliding up and down for those of you who are just listening versus tapping, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't click, you
scroll.
You swipe.
Yep.
You scroll, you swipe, you don't click. And that, I think that's the sort of end state of where the web is going. And so as a result, if you're a marketer and your job has been get traffic, you need to have a tough conversation with your boss, your team, your client, and say, that's not what marketing is.
Yeah.
We need to return to the roots of marketing, which is not drive as many visitors as possible and then convert a very tiny number of them. It's be present in all the places where our audience pays attention, knowing that those sources will send an ever decreasing share of them to our property, but the ones who come to our property will be the ones who are most inclined to purchase.
Yeah.
And so it's not, zero-click internet is not going to kill all transactions. It's just going to kill all the information consumption that used to happen on your site that now happens in the platforms before anyone ever gets to your site.
Yeah. So it hasn't.
That's the story.
Yeah. So it hasn't killed content marketing. It hasn't killed.
No.
Quite the opposite, right?
I mean, it certainly increases the importance of content marketing that gets distributed.
Right. Here.
Right. So like no longer, you can't just publish on your website and say, well, I did my job.
I'm done.
No. Yeah, you're not done, right? That's the start. Like that's step 1 of 10. Now go figure out all the places your audience consumes that content. Go promote that same message, that same content, that same nudge in all those places. And if you want to be in Google's answers or ChatGPT's answers or the Reddit threads where people are, posting human information, or the YouTube videos or the podcasts or whatever it is, you better be getting your message into all of those places. And distribution of the message is what will be used by every language model. So
yeah,
distribute, friends.
Yep. Create and distribute. And, one of the things that you recently made a great point about, and I forget exactly where, it may have been one of your posts on LinkedIn or somewhere else, is that, I think people's point of view on search has been what you said a moment ago, is like, get the clicks. Once you get the clicks, you can attribute the clicks, get them. And now search is, it reminds me of brand and all the tenets around building brands. It's an influence play. You're trying to make friends and influence people and get them to prefer you or remember you when they want something that you just happen to provide.
I like the analogy of, you're driving down the highway and you see a billboard for a burger joint.
Yeah.
Right. And big juicy burgers, next exit. And there is no way that anybody who drives, off at the next exit and stops at the burger place, it's not like at the cash register, they say, oh yeah, welcome to, Rand's Burgers, Steve. How did you hear about us today?
Yeah. Right.
What?
And you can't have a burger unless you tell me.
Right. Yeah. You have to tell. And then if you check the billboard, we'll buy more billboards. But if you don't say billboard and not enough people do, then we won't buy any more billboards.
Yeah.
That's not how it works, right? The way it worked was you buy billboards in Detroit and then you see what lift of same store sales is in Detroit. And then if the lift is 7%, then you repeat that experiment in Milwaukee. And if you again see 7% lift in Milwaukee, then you try it in the whole Midwest. Meanwhile, you're running a similar billboard campaign in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Fresno, and with a different message, and you're seeing which one produces more lift, and then you roll out the one that's most successful nationwide.
Yep.
Right? And that is just fundamentally different from how we do internet digital marketing attribution, or how we've done it for a quarter century. And I think that model, the attribution model, is dying, and we've got to go to the highway billboard model again. It's going to be a slog convincing people to go back to this world of measurement, not attribution.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I was going to ask you, I think you can probably speak to it a little bit more, what in this world right now marketers really need to wake up and kind of like remember or learn or change. Because, a lot of people that listen to our podcast are CMOs and marketing leaders, marketing directors, so they don't spend all their time in search. Yeah. But I do think there's some like perceptions and habits and ways of looking at digital marketing that are now like almost our Achilles heel.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think so. I don't spend a ton of time in search either, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
Most of my world these days is audience research and market research and understanding people. But I will say that The problem that we're talking about is not limited to search as a channel. There are still far too many marketing leaders who think of all sorts of digital channel content. They think of email, they think of social, they think of search. They think of all of these channels as places to measure based on not just the traffic that they send, although they look at the amount of traffic that's sent and then they say, oh, okay, this is doing well for us. This is doing poorly. You marketers need to grow our number of visits that we're getting from social, or, whatever it is. And that's completely foolish for a million reasons, which we could get into. But we need to change the way we think about those channels, as instead, how many people in our audience are we influencing on those platforms?
Yeah.
You might remember.
I do.
For years, I stood on stage.
Yep.
I would stand on stages. I would get on my, videos at Moz, at my old company, and I would talk about vanity metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Vanity metrics like impressions, views, watches, subscribers, fans. I was like, oh, these are vanity metrics. They're foolish. You're dumb to even pay attention to them. Well, guess what? I was wrong. And the OG marketers of that time period who did pay attention to those metrics, they were right. Those are things you should be paying attention to. If your podcast has more views and listens, that is a good signal that what you are creating is appealing to more people.
Yeah.
If your LinkedIn post is reaching more impressions, that's a really good signal about the content that you've created. And the same thing is true for, YouTube subscribers, and it's true for, fans on Facebook, and it's true for your TikTok subscribers. And it's true even in Google for your impressions in search.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what Google doesn't do, and this really bothers me, is it won't tell you when your brand is mentioned in an AI overview or an instant answer.
I think the lack of transparency is huge.
Yeah. Well, and look, I mean, to Google's credit, they do a way better job than Claude or Perplexity or ChatGPT or or Copilot or any of these other ones. So it's hard to give them a hard time without being like, of course, the AI tools are terrible on this. But you have to measure those what used to pejoratively be called vanity metrics, because that tells you whether you're reaching more and more people. It's sort of like measuring how many people looked up at the billboard on the highway and saw the sign for your burger. We know that 90% of those people won't even remember it. But after you've seen the billboard 10 times, it sticks in your head, right?
And then the next time you're hungry.
And then the next time you're hungry,
a burger might be the choice that you
make. I feel like I've heard about that burger place. You won't be able, by the way, no one is good at remembering why they heard of a place. That's another like totally false, marketing theory. But you can measure lift.
Hey, everyone. And that's where the internet just died on me and Rand. So that's the end of part 1 of my conversation with Rand. And he was gracious enough to come back and record another whole conversation for a part 2, where we do a deep dive into all things SparkToro, understanding your audience, and so much more. So please tune in for that conversation. It'll be coming out in a couple of weeks. And special thanks to Rand for being so generous with his time. All right. Thank you guys for listening in. Want to hear more inspiring stories? Subscribe on your preferred podcast app so you don't miss an episode. And if you like what we're doing, please rate, review, and share. It's the best way to support us. Thank you for listening to Brand Story.